allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, under God, justice for all.
Hello? I'm gonna call him pretty soon.
Okay, our first agenda item is a joint meeting with the Planning Board and the Finance Committee to discuss the MBTA community zoning requirements. For the record, I'll just say who I see here from each committee for our recording secretary, and please let me know if I miss someone.
I'll give him a call shortly.
For the Planning Board, Mike Raisbeck, Mike Walsh, and Nancy Arroway. Is there anybody else?
Yeah.
And then for the Finance Committee,
Yeah.
I've got Sam Chase, Jim Clancy, and Anita Tonini.
I'll give him a call when I have a.
Is that everybody?
Little bit of a break.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to turn this over to Evan.
Alrighty.
I asked the board asked
Fine, okay.
if we could have a joint meeting with the Planning Board and the Finance Committee just to give you an overview
Okay.
of what the MBTA community
Yeah, I can do that.
the communities are and what's coming down the road. And I know some of you have some familiarity with this already.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Uh-oh.
Evan needed
All
by
right,
the state requirement, Evan needed the select board to approve
Waiting room?
submission of the paperwork to keep us in play as an MBTA community. And so we approved that, but didn't feel that we should continue acting without the involvement of the planning board and potentially the finance committee downstream. It's very early in the stages, as Evan will explain, but we simply gave the okay to keep us in play, and there's nothing that says we have to commit to it if the town decides they don't want to continue to be an MBTA community. So Evan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, good evening, Evan Belansky, Chelmsford Community Development. So as the chair indicated, I was here back in April, and we had a brief overview. So what's on the agenda is the state's webinar slide deck. So that's available for people in the community to review. It goes into a little bit more granular background as to why the state has pursued this program. It also has the MBTA information form. That was the specific request and action at the select board meeting of April 19th. So again, the MBTA zoning comes out of Chapter 358, Acts of 2020, where it went into the State Zoning Act and formally revised the State Zoning Act. So currently, as the chair indicated, we are at interim compliance via the Select Board's April 19th authority to submit the MBTA Community Information Form. That's the first step within the process. From here, based upon the draft guidelines, Chelmsford has until 2024 to create a compliant zoning district per the guidelines. The draft guidelines currently indicate that communities that are in non-compliance will not be eligible for the one-stop grant program. Process moving forward, within that MBTA form, the town indicated that it would need technical assistance, not only to draft the zoning, but also to calculate the multifamily capacity. The MBTA form expressed a desire to receive this technical assistance from Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, our regional planning agency. And as many of you know, we have a good, close working relationship with them. Editorially, I envision that the local process would be led by the planning board. Next slide, please. So within the MBTA information form, there was a series of questions, and I just wanted to highlight some of the more applicable questions for this evening. Question 6 asked if we had any transit amenities within a half mile. They specifically defined transit amenities to mean a commuter rail, a bus station, something that has a dedicated structure. For purposes of Chelmsford, we do not have any transit amenities, and bus stops are not considered a transit amenity. Question 6A asks about areas of concentrated development. Our form indicated that, yes, we do have areas of concentrated development, areas such as Center and North Villages, portions of Route 110, portions of Tingsboro Road. Question 7 asks if we had any existing zoning of 15 units gross acreage by right zoning. The form answered yes, and we indicated that the recently adopted UMass West Multifamily Overlay District is compliant with 15 units per acre by right zoning. Other relevant information per the draft regulations. One of the key provisions is minimum land area of at least 50 acres. It may consist of sub-districts. However, any individual sub-district cannot be less than 5 acres. So as we're playing this out, the town is taking the position that we currently have a 34-acre district that is comprised of the UMass West Overlay District. The next provision is minimum unit capacity. We are an MBTA adjacent community, which means that 10% of our total 2020 housing units equate to our unit capacity. Our unit capacity is 1,477. Just to be very clear, and I tried to make this clear back in April, the state's webinar and the guidelines are attempting to articulate that capacity is about enabling an opportunity, not about actual production. Towns are not required to ensure production, and what they mean by that is towns are required to provide the zoning opportunity. However, production is also based upon availability of utilities, Title V consideration, wetlands consideration, economic reality, existing on-the-ground conditions, and so forth. In Chelmsford case, where there is no land area within a half mile of a transit amenity, the draft regulations expect reasonable access to transit. Next slide, please. So this slide comes right off of the Lowell Regional Transit Authority's website. It depicts the suburban routes that currently exist in Chelmsford. And this is just provided for initial considerations, since one of the primary criteria moving forward will be to try to find locations that have reasonable access to existing public transit. So we have dedicated bus routes that go up to Vinyl Square, go down Tingsboro Road, go down Groton Road. We also have a route that encompasses Drum Hill. And then we have routes that are in the center that extend out to Route 110, out to the town of Westford. We have a route that extends from the center down Chelmsford Street into Lowell. And then we have a final route that extends down Route 129. All of these routes provide either direct or connections to the main terminal in Lowell, which you can then access the commuter rail station in Lowell. Final slide. So some additional considerations. If we wanted to approach this just simply based upon mathematics, Chelmsford needs a minimum of 98 acres times 15 units per acre, would equate to the 1,477 units. If we want to look at UMass West as an example, 26 of the 34 acres are developable, and that equates to 390 units. So you would need an additional unit capacity of 1,087 units. And again, if you were to use the UMass West as a physical example for moving forward, you would need an additional 73 acres of land to accommodate the remaining 1,087 units. From a strategic point of view, there are a variety of ways to look at this. The town can consider focused on existing developed land. Town could look at focusing on existing vacant land or a combination of the two. There are a variety of areas and properties in town that are currently already built at 15 units or more per acre. Those include most of the 40Bs. It includes some of the COID projects that the planning board has recently approved. And there's likely historic properties along Tingsboro Road and Littleton Road that come close, if not exceed, the 15 units per acre. Another strategy is to look purely at vacant land or vacant or underutilized and obsolete buildings. Some of those that come to mind may be along Route 129. And then you could also focus on existing villages and commercial corridors, which would basically mirror existing zoning and existing zoning overlays. In conclusion, standing in front of you at this point, I believe that there are options for compliance that exist, combining mathematics and mirroring existing zoning districts and zoning overlay strategies. So that was a presentation for this evening. I hope that we can have some open dialogue, and then we can answer questions if need be.
Thank you, Evan. Just for the record, Deirdre Connolly from the Planning Board also joined this meeting. So do we have any questions from the Finance Committee or the Planning Board? No? You can just come to the podium so the mic picks you up, please.
Mike Walsh, Planning Board. This is for Evan. Evan, I'm talking to this way.
You can come this way.
Does it have to? The buildings have to be on the corridors of the buses?
So the areas that this process will focus on don't have to be directly on those main corridors. They have to provide, obviously, it need to be within a close walking distance. The whole strategy and theme to this is that the zoned areas have either direct or close proximity to public transit.
Evan, as I recall, you could take a current unit and add to it, and that would be a way of. Is there a minimum or a maximum
So the
square footage on the addition?
Not exactly. So the methodology that the state requires is that once you identify areas, you then need to go through a methodology to determine that the physical land can accommodate a minimum of 15 units per acre. So the way you would do that is you would look at existing zoning, floor area ratio, setbacks, things of that nature. You would then proceed to other town bylaws, such as wetland bylaws. You would then proceed to infrastructure limitations. In Chelmsford's case, we would have to likely rely on Title V. Mm-hmm. And that report and methodology would be submitted to the state in an attempt to document that the areas that you're zoning have a true opportunity to accommodate a minimum of 15 units per acre. The only reason that communities are talking about existing developed areas is that at the end of the day, if you have, let's say, portions of Littleton Road have, 750 units, whether it's 10, 20, 30 years from now, the net yield difference won't be 1,400 units. It'll be something less than that because on the ground in Chelmsford, you would be calculating existing units. The state's not interested in existing units for their methodology, but at the local level, very often the questions will be what are the additional impacts? And so while the state is looking for a capacity of up to 1,477 units, we may zone areas that already have 1,000 units. And so, as I said, over time, the town isn't faced with building a new 1,400 units. It's the delta between existing and additional capacity.
Thank you.
You got a question behind you, Evan?
Nancy Arroway, Planning Board. Evan, I'm still confused about this 1477. Is this a requirement to create a capacity for an additional 1477 units? Or is it a requirement to create a capacity that will support 1477 altogether?
So the draft guidelines indicate that the requirement is for the town to zone for the opportunity. So in order to be compliant, we're going to have to go through their methodology and prove that the areas that the town zones for by right 15 units an acre, that per their methodology, that physical land area can actually accommodate 15 units per acre, equaling 1,477 units. Whether those 1,477 units ever physically get built or not, that's not the state's concern. That's why I keep mentioning that there are physical limitations, there are property ownership limitations, there may be properties that have homeowners associations and deed restrictions. That's not, those are limitations and challenges outside the scope of zoning. Did I answer your question?
No.
No, sorry.
No, you're not. Can existing units be counted toward that 1477?
No, they cannot. They cannot. At the local level, so there's a distinction between what the state is asking for, which is a capacity, that the new zoning overlays can accommodate a capacity of 1,477 units, period, the end. They're not interested in knowing what is physically already on the ground. At a local level, my expectation is the conversation will quickly be about if we may not want to literally accommodate 1,400 new units. Therefore, we're picking areas that already have development. At the local level, that will likely be an important conversation because over the next 10, 20, 30 years, as this capacity gets built, you'll have a delta between what's physically on the ground now, and let's assume the average is 10 units an acre, and we zone for 15 units an acre. You're not literally building 1,400 new housing units, because some of these projects that are zoned currently at 10 units an acre, theoretically they get demolished and they build to 15 units an acre. So that's important at the local level if we're concerned about trying to limit or manage future impacts related to infrastructure, traffic, schools, things of that nature. But the state is very clear. They're not looking at existing, they're looking at future potential. And as far as the state's concerned, the Chelmsford's goal is to zone for the capacity and opportunity for 1,477 units.
So Evan, that's a little bit of I think, a different conversation than we had in April, because my understanding in April was we could choose to put the zoning where we already have multifamily housing.
Which you still can.
And you're saying we can still choose to do that, but that housing that's there doesn't count toward the 1477.
It only counts if we can prove that the existing units per acre is 15 or more.
Okay.
So that's why I mentioned, we do have certain areas and certain projects that exceed the 15 units per acre. The limitation and the challenge with focusing on those areas is that any one sub-district can be no smaller than 5 acres. So we may strategically be able to pick certain projects that already exceed that 15 units an acre. If the project itself isn't over 5 acres, then we're going to have to expand that area to accommodate adjacent properties to meet that 5 acre minimum.
Okay.
Still going to be age restricted?
So the statute, the legislation does not require, it prohibits age restriction. You can include an affordability component, but it cannot be age restricted.
We have another question behind you.
So, Evan, from what we're hearing...
We just need your name for the record.
Sure, Jim Clancy, Chair of the Finance Committee. So, Evan, just to be clear, this is zoning, not building units. This is about having capacity, and if there are units there already, if they meet the 15 per acre requirement, we're all set. And I just want to be clear where we comply for grant purposes with this new zoning. So is it, we have the zoning, we can show that there's the ability to, within the structure and the locations have been identified by the planning board for the zoning of 15 units per acre, as long as we can show we have enough that there could possibly be 1477 units built, we'll comply for the grants will be able to be issued to us. And then my part two question of that is, if that's the case, then where's the cutoff date for the 390 that are being built at the UMass West campus?
So the answer to part one is yes. The answer to part two is, as far as I'm aware, other than the MBTA form, the state has no specific information that the UMass West overlay and/or project exists. This process, as I outlined, is a work in progress. As of yesterday, there was a recent news article that said that the final guidelines would be issued sometime in the summer. That doesn't mean that the program is up and running. As I mentioned to you on April 19th, MMA, MAPC, the Mass Association of Town Councils all issued very robust comments. And as I also mentioned, just because the draft guidelines are issued and the state intends to proceed, doesn't mean that there aren't some challenges. So as I presented this evening, the town's position at this point is that we will continue to present the UMass West overlay district as being compliant, which at a minimum should put the town in a position of partial compliance or working towards full compliance. And then the draft guidelines that currently exist have adjacent communities such as Chelmsford having a deadline at the end of 2024 to achieve full compliance. That answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Hi, Mike Raisbeck, Chair of the Planning Board. Obviously, it's a little premature to guess what districts might be allocated to meet these requirements here, but Evan, do you have any kind of a thumbnail guess as to what we currently have that would become close? For example, the existing 40Bs, for example, some sections along 110. How much of that is there that comes close to meeting these requirements? I'm trying to get a sense of how far away we are from it.
Yeah, honestly, that's a difficult question. I haven't done that number crunching to this point. I think the challenge with all of our 40Bs are over 15 units an acre. The problem with them out of the gate is that very few of the parcels are actually 5 acres or more. So at that point, you'd be looking at, as I mentioned earlier, enlarging the district to accommodate adjacent properties. In some cases along Littleton Road, some of those adjacent properties are already multifamily, but they're likely under 15 units an acre, but certainly probably around 10 units an acre. So that would be my starting point, is to look at existing 40Bs, where are they located, As many of us know, some 40Bs are located in close proximity to neighborhoods. That may not be a great place to start. So I think it's a sensitive discussion. One, that's why I mentioned a variety of different strategies, and we can pick and choose between the strategies as to how we want this to work for Chelmsford. In some cases, in order to get to the remaining 73 acres, maybe some of those sub-districts are existing 40Bs. In other cases, maybe the town identifies an existing vacant parcel or a vacant office building that everyone has consensus on. So the beauty of the process at a local level, there's not one strategy that we need to pick and choose. We can use all of these different strategies to achieve full compliance.
Evan, I have a question. So we are an MBTA designated community by the state statute. And so short of getting the law changed, we're an MBTA designated community. If down the road we're not compliant with this requirement for having the capacity for the 1477 units, what is the penalty as you know it today? Is it just that we're not eligible for one-stop grants, or is it more than that?
That appears to be what's articulated in the statute as well as the draft guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
And just, editorially, that's significant grant opportunity for the town of Chelmsford. The town has actively participated in those grant programs. We've been fairly successful in those grant programs, most recently partnering with the North Chelmsford Water District. And so that's substantial money and substantial benefit, not just to the town of Chelmsford as we traditionally define it, but it could be for the housing authority, could be for any water district to build, expand, or improve existing infrastructure. And that infrastructure is not just traditional infrastructure, but there may be some non-traditional infrastructure involved.
Thank you.
Quick question. So what do you see as the process timeline approximately to get a thumbnail so we could really assess those three bullets, those three strategies? Because I don't see it going after one. I see identifying all three types of land
Right.
areas and then starting to parse it down
Exactly.
to what we think might be a.
So as I presented, and as we indicated on the information form, I think the town's preference is not to do this in-house,
Right.
but to work with NIMCOG. So my understanding is that as the guidelines are finalized, the technical assistance programs will be finalized. It's been presented that towns will have multiple opportunities to engage in technical assistance, and that would all be covered within the program. So for NIMCOG and Chelmsford,
Yeah.
at earliest, we're talking sometime in the fall, where the state technical assistance programs would roll out. While I could proceed and do some of this, my preference would be to have NIMCOG on board, engage with the planning board and the community, discuss the different strategies. The other kind of elephant in the room is doing anything before the final guidelines come out is somewhat risky. So I think the best approach moving forward is to wait for those final guidelines to come out, then work with NIMCOG and technical assistance. Worst case scenario, we're looking at 2 full calendar years, which is more than enough ample time. In order to be compliant, at the 11th hour, we'd have the October 2024 town meeting. And maybe the strategy is not to bring everything to one town meeting, similar to what we did with UMass West. There's a first step, and maybe there's a second step, and maybe there's a third step. I think it all is going to depend on the community process and engagement, and to what level and extent we can achieve some degree of consensus. There may be no-brainers that everyone agrees to, and hopefully that can take us over the finish line. And then, maybe it turns out that we have enough existing development that's over 15 units an acre. So, the more you look into it, I don't think it's insurmountable. I think based upon Chelmsford's uniqueness and the way we've developed over the years, I think we're going to get a long way there without having to be too controversial, so to speak.
Evan, Anita Tonini in the Zoom room has a question.
Sure.
Evan, I'm just piggybacking off of what Virginia had asked about the penalty. You said you wouldn't get these grants. Do you have the value of what these grants were in the last couple of years?
Sure. So just this past year, we partnered with the North Chelmsford Water District, and we're successful in receiving $866,000 for the Groton Road water main upgrade. And so that upgrade, I want to mention this because it's important, while that upgrade provided direct benefit to the 12 duplexes on Groton Road, the water district in the town specifically mentioned in the grant application that it also provides benefit to existing homeowners who are on that main line. It also provides benefit to other property owners along that main line. Just this past last week, with the Select Board's authorization, we applied for $250,000 from housing choice funds to advance the 25% design plans for Vinyl Square transportation improvement project. A couple of years ago, we received $370,000 to upgrade Cushing Place. Again, that was in partnership with Gristmill 1, but it also was complementary and consistent with the town's Center Village Master Plan and the Brook Walk and wayfinding. So that's kind of the spirit and intent of the grants. I think a number of years ago, the town was working with developers to try to successfully obtain grants. Moving forward, I think that's slightly different position that the town finds itself in, where most of these large-scale projects would likely need private Title V systems. So you're not necessarily looking at upgrading traditional infrastructure. You'd be looking at utilizing and leveraging private development to utilize state grants to benefit the neighborhood in which these projects are located in. So whether it's upgrading sidewalks, pedestrian and bicycle amenities, neighborhood traffic calming, things of that nature. And so at a certain scope and scale, as we discussed over the last several months, there's never enough money to do everything that needs to be done or should be done. So that's what these state grant programs provide an opportunity for.
Can I just do a follow-up question on that, just for my own clarification? When you apply for these grants, are they related to new projects, or it sounded a little bit like you were saying they were related to specific additional housing, but I just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand that.
That's a good question. So most of the grant programs within the One Stop need to provide a direct correlation to either new housing or new economic development. There are, those same grants do provide for towns to apply to promote future housing and economic development opportunities. But so the first category is that they're directly related to, and the second category is that they promote and will encourage or facilitate future housing and economic development.
So Evan, it's your plan to work
Okay.
this, I'm sorry, were you done, Anita?
No, go ahead.
Okay. It's your plan.
I just want to know on the money, is there a way to allocate how much went to additional homeowners and how much went to the new development?
Not specifically. I could reach out to the water district. My understanding is that 866 was needed to physically upgrade the water main.
Yeah.
And that most of that additional capacity within the larger diameter pipe is obviously to accommodate the new 12 duplexes. However, I can tell you that that additional main upgrade will provide additional capacity for future development along that main. And again, this is a water district main, not a town pipe.
So Evan, it's your plan to work the details of this over, in terms of the timing and over the next couple of years, with the planning board as the main body.
That's what I would suggest.
And so does anybody in this meeting have any concerns with that? I personally am fine with it. Okay.
I mean, certainly
Are
there'd be multiple check-ins.
Right. No, I just, are there any other questions or clarifications for Evan at a high level at this point? Go ahead, Deirdre.
I was on Zoom while I was driving here. So I just have a question, Evan, about as we're an MBTA community and as we're moving towards compliance in the interval, are we eligible to apply for grants during that time?
Yes.
But if we were not moving towards compliance, we would not be eligible?
Correct.
Okay. And that.
So you're not at the mic, so just for the,
The answer is yes, that's correct.
okay, thank you.
Oh, I didn't introduce myself, Deirdre Conley, Planning Board. And then you had mentioned that it's not possible to have age requirements or age stipulations. So does that fact that we have the age choice portion of the UMass, does that in any way adversely impact that as a part?
That's to be determined. Again, the AG's office is reviewing the zoning for zoning compliance. Simultaneously, the MBTA program is aware, but they don't have the full details of the overlay yet. It's a good question, and worst case is that segment of the overlay it may not count. So
Okay.
instead of 390 units, you'd be at 354.
Anything else for Evan? Okay, it's 6:44. I'll take a motion to adjourn this joint meeting.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the joint planning board, Board of Selectmen, Select Board meeting
Finance Committee.
and Finance Committee.
Second motion.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Unanimous. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for your time, Evan. Appreciate it.
You can go.
The Select Board doesn't get to leave. Okay, so next up on the Select Board agenda is public service announcements. We have Evelyn Thorne with the Arts and Technology Education Fund Grant Awards, and thank you again for waiting.
Good evening, Evelyn Thorne, and I'm the chairperson of the Arts and Technology Education Fund Committee. I usually come before you as a board once or twice a year. During COVID, obviously, we didn't make any awards, but this is an annual event that we have with the
1 minute.
awards.
Could someone shut the door then? Thank you. Go ahead.
So we usually come once a year. I usually show up sometime in January or at the end of March, just to remind people that in the application process, it's for the staff of the Chelmsford Public Schools that make application for the funds for the Arts and Technology Education Fund that's appointed by the town manager. And With that, they are available usually in January 1st, and the deadline is March 31st. This year, we did have most of our applications did come electronically. There is an electronic process that is also in the school system for the staff, besides the fact that the town manager's office also has the applications online. So there's a lot of availability for the staff to be able to make the application for the funds. As you know, but maybe somebody in the audience, listening audience, don't know, that the funds are available through the town treasurer's office, and we don't know who gives them. They are donations. They come through your excise tax bills and your real estate tax bills. Now, if you do not pay those and you'd like to make a donation, it's easy enough to send a check to the town treasurer's office and notate that it's for the Arts and Technology Education Fund Committee. And we would appreciate that, and we thank everyone that has given us funds in the past. We do have, besides myself, 4 of the members that are present. I know that you had stated the members prior at your joint meeting. We have Carrie Meikle, we have Kirk Marshall, we have Beverly Barrett, and we have Candy Chase. 3 of our members are not able to make it this evening. And so we want to also thank them for all of their time that they have in the process. It was challenging during COVID when we had to Zoom everything. It was a little bit easier as we've gone along. So we had 4 awards that we voted on this year. And the first award, Allison Gover from the high school, was for a pottery wheel. She was not able to make it this evening. The second award that I would announce, and I'm just going to say her first name. I apologize for not knowing how to pronounce her name, is Sangeeta. Yes. And she was just given an award of $246.48 for specialized reading materials. The application doesn't have to be for a tremendous amount of money. It's something that will supplement the curriculum. It will make her job easier, and it will also, in some cases, make more equipment and supplies available for the opportunity for our students to access them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. As long as she gets it. Thank you. Our second award is Valerie Lichtenhall for the students at the Chelmsford High School for digital microscopes for forensics. Many times when we get some of these, the applications, they're unique. Some of us that have science background, we get kind of excited about that. Not that we don't about anything else, but I'm always, and so is all the other members, very enthusiastic about the creativity of the applications from our staff. And our last award is to Mary Ellen Forty, who is working with the CHIPS program over at Westlands. This is for $325 for Learning with Light. She is building a program from year to year with different things for our younger students, and maybe some of those that are challenged that's in that particular program. So we didn't have that many, but we're always excited about any that we do get. And so we will be making some changes to our application in order for it to be more streamlined so that we limit the questions. We are working even more collaboratively and cooperatively with the Chelmsford Public Schools Administration so that we understand better exactly how all of this fits into their curriculum, and they're also aware of what those projects are so that they sometimes will see trends that come across, because our teachers are right there, at the cutting edge of all of the different curriculum and available. And it's been fascinating to do this, and it's been happening since 1996. Do you have any questions? All right,
It's
thank you
wonderful.
very
I
much.
appreciate you sharing. Thank you. Okay, Ken.
We have a few public service announcements tonight. The first one is the Chelmsford Grower Row. program. It's a community growing fresh produce for neighbors struggling with food insecurity. The mission is to facilitate a continuous supply of locally grown fresh produce for the food insecure members of our community. Basically, the way it works, fresh produce is grown by our volunteer backyard gardeners and in our community garden food pantry plots, and then we donate that food to the Chelmsford Food Pantry, Table of Plenty, and the residents of the Chelmsford Housing Authority. We ask you volunteer with us. There are so many volunteer opportunities. Help us grow by planting an extra produce in your own gardens, signing up to assist with produce receiving and distribution, or by joining a team of growers who help maintain our garden plots. And you can also donate to the program. If you have any questions, you can call 978-995-2002. The website, the email address for them is chelmsfordgrowerrow@gmail.com or chelmsfordgrow@gmail.com. Our next public service announcement is the Select Board will be hosting a listening session to look at improvements around the town center. This will be held at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts, Monday, June 13th at 6 p.m. If you are interested in giving us any input or would like to share your thoughts, we're inviting you to come to the listening session and discuss what we can do around the town center. The board's goal is to develop ideas for improving the community areas from the town common through North Road and the historic district. This includes the considerations of modifications to improve event audio experiences, landscaping, trees, parking lots, brick walk, and the center vacant parcel. So we'd appreciate any public input we can get on that. And our last public service announcement is the Juneteenth celebration, which is Saturday, June 18th, from 1 to 3 p.m. on the Town Common. This is being hosted by the Chelmsford Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Learn the history of June 19th, 1865. There'll be music, vendors, poetry, community engagement, kids' activities, and more. And Raquel Majeski is the keynote speaker. So you can come and hear her talk. She's on the Mass Diversity Task Force and assistant head of the School for Equity and Community Life at Lawrence Academy.
We actually had one other flyer there for public service announcements.
I got it. The final one, join the Chelmsford Department of Health for their Pride Table. And join us for local facts about the LGBTQIA+ history, health disparities, free goodies, and fun. That will be at the Chelmsford Market on the Common, June 11th from 1 to 4.
Thank you, Ken. Next up, we have public input. Is there anyone who would like to address the board during public input? Sure.
Mike Combs on Fuller Road. As you know, this is National Pride Month, and I know that the board did a proclamation recognizing that, and I appreciate that. Last weekend, Lowell had visible flag raising for the LGBT rainbow flag, along with a festival around that. And that just brings more visibility than the proclamation does. And it's important because it reminds people who might be bullied or made to feel unwelcome or like an outsider that the people that are making them unwelcome are the exception and not the rule. That there is broader support in the community for people of all kinds. A rainbow is to represent everybody. And so, I guess I want to encourage a more welcoming display, and that the flag is a bigger step in that direction. I see that the board is looking to revise the policy on flags that can be displayed on town property, and I had two questions. I don't know if it's appropriate for me to ask questions.
You can ask, but we can't answer during this segment because it's not officially on the agenda. Sure. So you're welcome to pose the questions.
I'll ask the questions, and it's funny, the sound, your voice came from behind me. I was like, what happened? So I saw that it allows us to raise flags for holidays, but it didn't define holidays. My question is, how will holidays be defined? And it said that that it allows for things with business logos. And I guess my bottom line is, will this change in the policy allow Chelmsford to display the rainbow flag or recognize the Pride Month, as we do with a proclamation, and then raise that flag accordingly on town properties. I want to say, I think I've seen firsthand that this is important to people who, really feel, get bullied a little here and picked on a little there, and it really matters to them. And I want to thank you for revisiting this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak during public input? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to committee vacancies.
So for the week of June 6, 2022, we have the following community vacancies available. Arts and Technology Education Fund has 1 3-year seat. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee has 1 unexpired 3-year seat and 1 3-year term. CCA Advisory Committee is looking to fill 2 1-year terms. Community Action Program Committee, 2 1-year terms. Council on Aging has 2 unexpired 3-year terms and 5 associate member positions staggered in 3-year terms ending each June 30th each year. Cultural Council has 2 3-year terms. Holiday Decorating Committee is looking to fill 2 seats. They're 1-year terms. Parade Committee, all applicants are welcome. Those are 1-year terms expiring July 31st each year. Public Celebrations Committee has 5 1-year terms. Recycling Committee has 1 1-year term. Tree Committee has 1 unexpired 3-year term and 1 3-year term. If you're interested in serving on any town board or committee, please complete an online application available at the town website. For more information, you can contact the town manager's office here at 50 Billerica Road, Chelmsford, Mass., or you can email the town manager at tmoffice@chelmsfordma.gov, or you can call his office at 978-250-5202.
Thank you, Ken. Next up, we have the public hearing for the National Grid and Verizon poll petition for Alpha Road. And I see we have a representative from National Grid in the Zoom room. If you could introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Vazna represent National Grid, 1101 Turnpike Street, North Andover.
Do you want to just give a quick explanation of what you're trying
Yes,
to do here?
it turns out that Analog Devices at 20 Alpha Road, Chelmsford, they're looking to get upgrade in power, so they're requesting, so we as National Grid are requesting to have a poll petition to have a pole 12-50 placed approximately 17 feet east of the existing pole 13 now, in order to run plus or minus 210 feet of conduit from that new pole 12-50 to the new 3-phase pad that's going to be placed at the pretty much at their lot line, kind of, but inside of their property. So that's about it.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, this is a public hearing. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the public.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. We have another motion?
Yep, I will make a motion to approve the National Grid and Verizon poll petition on Alpha Road.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. You're all set, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
We didn't have a signature thing for this.
Pat, do you have a?
No, I just noticed we didn't have a signature page for this.
Oh. Okay, so the next up is licenses. First, we have a transfer of the common vigilar license and a new entertainment license for Shakeaholic. Do we have anyone from Shakeaholic here?
Hello.
Hi, we just need your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. So Tyler J. Campbell, 61 Central Square, Chelmsford, Mass.
Thank you. Do you want to say anything about what you're doing, or?
Oh. I've never done this before. So I am opening up a nutrition cafe, kind of the same thing that was already there before. It's a shake and tea cafe with meal filler shakes and high energy teas, and hopefully introducing some good healthy meals.
Great. And what do you envision for the entertainment?
Mostly like art shows, maybe a poetry night, low music, shake and tea parties. Yes.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, so you have seating for 22 there, is that?
It's
That's
not
kind of a small place.
Yeah, it's not seating for 22. It should be seating for 10, I think I have in there, but the maximum inside with the COVID regulations was 22.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, it says 8
Capacity
seats.
square, yeah.
Any other questions?
I'll make a
Type of
mo-
entertainment?
Say again?
Type of entertainment?
Could you clarify again the type of entertainment?
Oh, yeah, sure. So like a art show or poetry night or just like local musician, student musicians.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I'll make a motion to approve the common vigilar license for Chelmsford Nutrition LLC, the transfer of the common vigilar license for Chelmsford, common vigilar license from Chelmsford Nutrition LLC to Shakeaholic LLC, and to add an entertainment license to it to be exercised at 61 Central Square, Unit 5.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. You're all set. Good luck.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a great night.
Okay, next we have the one-day beer and wine license for St. John's Evangelist Church. Is there anyone from the church here? Does the board have any questions for itself? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine license for St. John's Evangelist Church located at 115 Middlesex Street, North Chelmsford, Mass.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Next up, we have the one-day expansion of the entertainment license for Center Brick House Pizza. Charlie Mickle is here.
Hello.
Hello.
Charlie Mickle, Brickhouse, 1 Central Square, Chelmsford. We're just looking to expand our license on July 3rd, very similar to what we've done in years past. We'll have a stage out front, and I think, I'm not sure if, so the stage is going to be used over on the common, I guess now on the 2nd, and then it's going to be moved to ours. That's, I think, the only hiccup in years past, bringing the stage over, so.
Any questions?
So are you going to have a rain date?
No,
Okay, remember last year you
I know.
had that issue?
We check with the band, no.
Oh, okay.
So it's either the 3rd or we're done.
Yeah.
So, and where they're having, something else on the common already on the 2nd, that would be really the only other date that we could possibly do it, and we're not going to do that.
And you're okay with the conditions from the police, fire, and
Yep.
building inspector? Any other questions?
What is the hours, Charlie? Did I see it? Did I
I
miss it?
think it's
9:30?
3
9:30.
to 9:30.
That's what you've done every other year.
Yep.
And there are no issues from Board of Health?
No.
With any of it?
Your wife gonna do the singing? again? Huh?
That's
Is
why
that
I'm
a
here.
condition of license approval,
Is that on the
George?
permit?
Is that a condition to
No, I
approve the
just asked
license?
him, she's good, so I,
Do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to grant a one-day expansion of your entertainment license for Center Brick House Pizza on July 3rd, 2022.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. You're all set. Thank you
you very
so
much.
much.
Good luck, Charlie.
Okay, Paul, reports and presentations.
Yeah, we're joined this evening by John Potts, engineer with Weston and Sampson Engineers, and he's going to present an update regarding the status of the consent order and the recent sewer investigations across the community. And he has a PowerPoint, and he'll just guide you through it when to change slides. So I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you. Good evening. My name, as Paul said, my name is John Potts with Weston and Sampson Engineers, and we can go to the first slide. Or the next slide.
Okay, I am on the first slide.
You're right. Just to remind everybody that in late March of 2020, there was an existing 16-inch force main failure at the Southwell Field Pump Station that discharged wastewater into Deep Brook and ultimately into the Merrimack River. As a result of that, the Mass DEP in October of 2021 issued an administrative consent order with penalty to the town that had 4 conditions as part of it. Go to the next slide. The first condition, which was item 8A, which is within 60 days, the town was to submit an update to to create an updated emergency response plan for any kind of sanitary sewer overflows. And that was due on December 1st of 2021, and that's the cover page of it, but that was submitted in a timely manner to Mass DEP. Second item. Also within 60 days, Weston and Sampson on behalf of the town had prepared an annual plan for II, which is infiltration and inflow, and operation and maintenance program. And the DEP had requested an update as to what the town had done to date with that. That was also submitted to DEP on December 1st of 2021. The next slide. The third item was that by November 1st of 2021, the town, they wanted to have a updated infiltration inflow plan, that sets forth it was continuation of the annual II plan and the O&M plan that was already prepared. They had requested some updates to it, so we revised it. We resubmitted it to them on November 1st, and again, that's just a cover page of it. Next slide. The final item, it was to prepare a pump station and force main assessment plan. And what that was going to do is we were going to look at all 41 pump stations throughout the town. We were going to look at all the force mains, and in order to hopefully prevent what happened at Southwell, we would provide an assessment as to the condition of the pump stations the best we could, and likelihoods of failures at any of the pump stations, and just create an assessment to go through for a future plan of what's going to happen if what happened at Southwell should happen again. That is due on October 3rd of this year. We are currently underway with that, and we're going to be doing some field investigations over the next few weeks, and we are on schedule to have that completed by October 3rd.
Are there any interim reports planned for that between now and when it's due?
That are submitted to DEP?
No, to us.
Oh, well, tonight we're providing an interim report on the investigation of the mains. That's the second part of this presentation.
We can, if you'd like, at some point, if you'd like us to come in between now and October, that's not a problem either.
Okay.
Next slide. Oh, we are. Actually, you go back one, I think. Did I? Nope, I'm sorry. Next slide. I forgot the pictures I put on them. As part of the third item in the ACO from DEP, which was part of the investigations, we began the first project of the investigations of sewers in town. We started to look at approximately 98,000 feet of sewer, which represents about 10 to 11% of the town's entire gravity sewer system. And what that project included was putting cameras down them from manhole to manhole to assess the condition, to look for leaks, to look for groundwater infiltration, to see what the flows looked like, and to basically just an overall assessment of the condition of the pipe. And that work started at the end of March, and it is about wrapped up. We have about 2 more days left of it. Also, as part of it, they did what was called flow isolation, which is between the hours of 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. We go in and we monitor the flows and register the amounts of flows, because typically between those hours, it should be, most people are going to be sleeping, so if we see flow in the pipe, it could be groundwater infiltration getting into the pipe, or something else, or a sump pump potentially running. When we completed that over about 4 to 5 nights. I haven't seen the full results, but all indications are that we didn't see any really registerable flows during the overnight hours, which is good. So as part of this, during the investigations on Littleton Road between Hunt Road and the Center Square, we found flows that were a lot higher than we anticipated in the 12-inch pipes. So that's, in order to complete the inspections, the town sewer workers had to shut down the 2 pump stations that were tributary to them, monitor them so that we could lower the flows and get the cameras down the pipes. The next slide. This just shows the route between Hunt Road and Center Square along Littleton. It's approximately, I'll go to the next slide, it has all the footages. It's about 7,000 to almost 8,000 feet of 10 and 12-inch PVC sewer. There's about 36 manholes, about 60 service connections along there. And as I said, there's 2 pump stations on Hunt Road and then Garrison Road, both tributary to that. And as I said, the town workers had to shut down and keep the pump stations off while we put the cameras down them so that we could see what the pipes looked like. And I have some photos of what the pipes looked like. As you can see in the flows, they're flowing approximately 40 to 50%, which is a little bit higher than you'd like to see in a pipe. You'd want to see maybe around 20 to 25% under normal conditions. So there was a little bit of concern of what was going on these pipes. Next slide. This is another section a little further closer to the square. I believe I have the addresses on there as to where they are. And again, these are 12-inch pipes that are flowing at approximately half full.
And that's with them shut down?
Say again?
That's when they're shut down?
Yeah, when it was shut down to get the cameras through, yes. They're a little bit higher. The cameras would have been submerged when we tried, so and therefore you wouldn't be able to see anything.
So you're saying though running it half full when the pump's not on is where the maximum you want to see it. So when the pumps are on,
It's running a little bit higher. We can't exactly, it wasn't full. They weren't flowing full. They were just flowing higher than the cameras. And it's mostly when the pump stations come on and discharge. The next slide. First and foremost, there's been no sewer backups along Littleton Road to date, so there's nothing of immediate concern. But right now, what we want to do is we want to look in order to prevent this and take a proactive approach, we want to look at some alternatives to the sewers to provide, to make a repair in that area so that down the road there aren't any backups into homes and sewer overflows along that route. So we're going to put a study together where we look at various options that can reduce the wastewater flows in that pipeline right now. Right now, the cost of the analysis right now is approximately $33,000 for our company to perform an analysis that will prepare recommendations. Cost estimates will look at probably up to about 3 to 4 alternatives and prepare estimated construction costs for all those and the ones with the least environmental impacts as well along that route. Next slide.
I just have a question.
Oh, sure.
Where it says the town is considering sewer repairs, this isn't really optional, is it?
No, we should do this. We should do this because you want to do is be responsible in terms of the prevention of backflows, and and he's John's going to explain what we'll be doing, and then we can sort of get into it a little deeper with the next slide.
Yep, next slide. The options, the initial ones that we've talked about right now, and again, we'll have a brainstorming session at the beginning of the project where we kick around probably a few more. But right now, the options is we can either remove along that 7,000 to 8,000 feet remove all the 10 and 12-inch pipe and put a new larger diameter sewer within the same trench. The other option was we take the force main off of Hunt Road and extend the force main all the way down to Center Square where the pipes are around 18-inch pipe, and we would have to find, that's part of the analysis, so we would have to find the proper discharge location further downstream for that force main. And another option that we're going to look at is to install a gravity relief sewer adjacent to the existing sewer and attach the force main from the Hunt Road into that. There wouldn't be any service connections. It would be exclusively for the pump station of Hunt Road, so that all the flows from Hunt Road and Garrison Road would be taken out of the existing gravity sewer. And it wouldn't have to be in at the same depth because we wouldn't be picking up the service connections. It would have to only be deep enough to get underneath the existing water services, basically. And those are all options we're going to look at and find hopefully the most cost-effective and least environmental.
So in your experience, what's the order of magnitude that we're talking? Is it millions, tens of millions? Is it?
For the construction?
To address this
I would
issue?
say it's, don't quote me, it would be probably between $5 and $10 million total for 7,000 to 8,000 feet of pipe. But
Okay.
again, that includes basically construction, engineering, police details, permitting, that would encompass everything.
And how long is the study going to take that you're going to do?
I believe the contract is about 4 months.
So are these repairs seasonal dependent? Like, do they have to be done before
You'd
the
be better
ground
off to do them
freezes?
like in starting in like March in a decent season. You don't want to be opening the roads up over winter. So it would be done between March and October during a normal construction season.
Is our urgency greater than that?
I don't think it is yet. No, I don't. Well, again, there have been no backups. This is this repair is purely trying to be proactive so that something doesn't come up down the road. That was like I said, the only thing we were concerned was with the high flows in this area. We're also going to do as part of the study is we're going to get about 5 to 6 years worth of what they call pump station run times from Hunt Road and Garrison, so that we can look at the history of the flows over like the last 6 years, so we can see where trends were to see if it is seasonally related, if it's in the spring groundwater is higher, so that we're going to collect as much data as we can before we try to put together any kind of option and present it to you.
And when you say like the March timeframe might be when you start to implement whatever option the town chooses, are there other things that have to fall in line with that? Like, do we need permitting from the state, or does DEP get involved? Like,
That would all be part
Is there
of-
anything else that adds to that timeline, or are you pretty confident that?
We would factor that all in before we pick the construction season. All that should be all in place. We wouldn't put this out to bid unless we had the permits and we had all the approvals. The only there probably would likely be a Conservation Commission hearing, and being 110, we would need a DOT permit for construction. Right now, those are the only 2 permits I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, Christine Clancy, our DPW director, is on the Zoom call as well, and she's overseeing this effort. I think that if it were to do to one of those suggested outcomes, you're probably talking multiple construction seasons.
Yes,
Yeah,
this wouldn't be next.
It's not like something you could do within a 9-month period. You'd be probably talking a couple year period.
It wouldn't be this
you wouldn't
2023.
expose. Yeah, you wouldn't expose it during the winter, much like we did
No.
any other sewer project. But so, our effort is to get out there as quick as possible to get the study done. And I think probably the reason that we chose this area to begin with is we thought there was if you get into the idea of why
Right,
this
when we-
area was chosen.
Yeah, when we went back and did the annual plan, this area, and we had flow meters in 2018, this was one of the areas that triggered into the higher ones, which was why it was part of the first 4 sub-areas that we looked at. We also have flow meter data that was from March through mid-July that we're going to be able to look at and see a more. We didn't do it as part of the thing, but we have flow meter readings every 5 minutes, every day, 24 hours a day, that we can look at and plot trends a little more at to get a decent idea of what the flows are in that area, is to make which is the most prudent repair.
Is this something you're putting in now, the flow meters, or are they always there?
No, they were already in. They were temporary ones. We put them in at the end of March, and they pulled them in, I think, July.
Is this unusual to get up to 50% then, I mean?
It's not unusual, no. It happens. It triggers something when it's a larger pipe, particularly when it's a 12-inch pipe. You don't want to see a 12-inch pipe flying.
Want a 15-inch pipe, is that what you're looking for in there?
Maybe, but I think it'll all depend on the cost. I don't want to say which option I think is better right now. I mean, the relief sewer might be the easiest one, just because it would be gravity. You don't have to connect service connections. It would probably be the fastest one to be installed and the least impacts to the pump stations, because if you extend the force main all the way down, you have to look back at the pump station and see what it's going to do to the pumps, and there might be pumps upgrades required. So that would possibly be the easiest one, but again, until we get into it all, we won't really know.
So every time there's a development being done in that area that was gonna, flow into that main line, was there some kind of a study done, or to see if, capacity calculations or anything done?
I'm sure but again, when we get all the pump station data for like the last 6-7 years, we're gonna look at that, and we're gonna look at the timing of when the developments came in, and we'll be able to see what the impact was from those developments, but I don't think those are the smoking guns on it. I think it's just the flows were higher than they thought were gonna be in that area.
Thank you.
So, well, part of this, because this says that you're gonna look at alternatives. Will it also give us a little bit of what we think might be the root cause?
Yes, once we start looking at the flow meter data and the trends, we might be able to get a better handle on what the cause of it was.
Yeah, because I think I'm interested in understanding the root cause, the timing, so I just don't want that to get glossed over.
No, I agree. I think
That's a really
that'll be part of it,
important
yep.
piece.
Yeah, in fact, that was part of our discussion. We met this morning at
Yes.
DPW for our periodic meetings as they've been doing these examinations, and that was part of our discussion with Christine and John and such this morning was, people are going to ask, whether it's here, a town meeting, or whatever, they're going to say, how did this come about? And that's where we said we're going to look back into the history of the flows and so forth and see.
I just didn't see it on the slide.
Because initially, as we said, we thought it was infiltration, because when we sort of targeted these initial areas of study, we targeted the areas that we thought would be areas of infiltration. And I guess the good news is we're not finding infiltration. The bad news is we found this higher than expected flow, and it may end up going back to the original design. We're just going to find out.
Correct. Yeah, that is good news, that the infiltration and inflow in this area was not a concern, and nor was it really in the other, once they wrap up in about another week, I haven't seen all the data yet, but so far, we didn't find anything that said, there's a problem area right here, there's a problem area here. The pipes were all in really good condition and flowing, so.
Were there any other prior reports as development was occurring on 110 to support the hookups from those particular sites?
I sent you the documentation that I have uncovered from the Beaverbrook development and the Chelmsford Woods, which is the Housing Authority's development on 110. And they were signed off by the town engineer at the time.
So you're saying there's no reports that go behind those letters?
I've not seen any documentation.
I think that's what he's asking.
but-
that's what I was asking.
Where's the calculations and things that go?
In the examination of files that I've requested from DPW, when former Director Perschetti was here, they didn't have any additional documentation. And obviously Christine can verify that, but we've not found any
Yeah, you would think
detailed
there would be
analysis.
some kind of a, backup for them to put a letter out like that.
No. We've not come across that at this point in time. That's why we really want to dig into it and find out what is it that triggered this.
So just before we leave that, if there's a new opinion that's a new development, say, and there's a requested letter from DPW or about the sewer, is there a required calculation or some standard that you're supposed to do and attach or put in the record?
Yeah, and I can ask
with
Christine to address that in terms of.
I'm just thinking from like a process standpoint and a practice standpoint going forward, if we can't.
Because there's two issues. One is we've always focused on the overall capacity of the system, knowing that we were nearing capacity. But as you're noting, and you also want to know the capacity of the pipeline that's in that area of town for the system. And I guess, I don't know if Christine wants to elaborate on that, on how that is going forward.
Sure. So we have, since I've started, we have been looking with a detailed process as to how we analyze any development. We do look at a 10-year history just for flow at an existing site. We also follow Title V calculations. Often in the what's submitted to us, the engineer for that development is also submitting calculations, so we review their calculations. If there are no calculations, we will look ourselves to Title V. So we are documenting with each application. We do have documentation since I've been here.
Right. So if we went back, and I'm just throwing this out, if we went back and looked at Beaverbrook, it's the most recent, I think, right?
Yep.
And wouldn't there, within that package, the calculations would have to be in there, I would think.
We haven't seen that. What we've seen is the letter saying that Beaverbrook, the town has the capacity in the line for the project of capacity. That's all we've seen. A sign off by the town engineer at the time.
At the time.
But we've not been able to come up and find the documentation behind that. It's not in the planning board packet, and
that
we've
doesn't
not
make
been
any
able to
sense.
uncover it at DPW at this point.
Okay.
Weston and Sampson wouldn't do that though, Paul, huh?
No, Weston Sampson designed the system. They weren't involved as people were connecting into the system.
no.
Actually, we
check it
didn't
out.
do the Littleton Road.
Oh,
That
okay,
was, that was the one section in Chelmsford that Weston and Sampson
That's
didn't
right.
do.
Right, so, yeah, so the designer for that section would, and speaking of Mike Visnauskas, who's been here for decades, his understanding is there really isn't anything that happened along, when they put that line in, they didn't foresee the level of development that would have happened on Littleton Road, the Kensington and so forth, if you go back to the original thing. And so, because that was sort of the question is, well, what happened out there?
Yeah, because if we're going to bring a $5 to $10 million hit to town meeting, boy, I think we
better
better
explain it.
understand
Yep.
what happened.
Yep.
And not just a fix.
Right, and that's what the report
Exactly.
will do. That's
That's
why
exactly what we're doing.
Good.
the dollar value is what it is on that report, because you're right, it isn't just, we're not just going to give you options and things. I mean, I could do that in a couple hours, I could put that all together if those were the options. But we are going to study the whole thing so that we give you the best information that we can as to the why before we give you, before the what's next.
Is there a threshold? You said that, it's at 50% or more right now. Is there a threshold over which, or at which we're required to report something to the state or to somebody else?
There's no threshold, but when we do designs as our firm, and what I've personally done is we look at it, if it gets to be about 75 to 80%, then we consider that a problem, and we recommend to clients that they start to upgrade their sewers if the flows start to see around 75 to 80% of the design capacity of a pipe.
And how much would you imagine with that length of pipe, with the tie-ins that are there, tributaries coming in, what would you say would the normal fluctuations be within the pipe? Maybe not at night, but during the course of use, percentage-wise?
I'd say it probably would jump between 30 to 60%.
They can fluctuate from 30 to 60?
Depending on, on a
Okay,
peak.
so in other
between
words, if we're
peaks.
at 45, you're saying it could go 30, could go 60?
Yeah, I would say that. I think that's fair.
Yep.
I mean, it's been a dry spring, as we know, this year. We're four inches of rainfall below the normal. But in the discussions today, over the years where we've had some significant storm events and so forth, we've never had a backflow issue in terms of going into people's homes or with the system. And so that's why we're sort of curious as to, what's out there and what the cause is. But obviously, we know of this because we suspected infiltration, but that not being the case, we really want to dig into this and also obviously prevent something, because the worst thing the town has to deal with, never mind the homeowner or the property owner, is a backflow. And so we're like I said, we're really trying to get after this immediately to learn more.
Would the analysis include looking back at the capacity and almost reverse engineering and saying, what would the numbers be? And are the numbers just way off for that size of pipe?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we would.
How
we
many rooms, single-family homes, businesses?
Yeah, I mean, we have that as all part of our thing. We know how much an 8-inch pipe can hold. We know what a 10, what a 12, what a 15 can hold. That's all part of our thing. So we
we're
could
going to see that.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other data source we have are our sewer bills. I mean, which come from the water meters. Now, yes, there can be infiltration and flow into the system that doesn't come through the water lines,
Right.
i.e. some pumps and so forth. But we will go back and look at the water,
Yeah,
the
no,
sewer
good.
reads, and
No, I'm
that will
just
help us
hoping
as
that
well.
we'll
No,
see everything,
Because, right, we're trying to
'cause-
gather all the
yeah.
information we can, because
4 months?
we're as,
I think that's what I put in the contract.
we're as curious as this as the board is, and as the community will be once it's better known.
Right.
In terms of what happened out there and what's going on and what can we do.
Okay.
How would something like this be financed?
You would do a borrowing, and then it would be basically a surcharge or a finance on the sewer bills. So it'd go through the sewer charge, much like.
For every sewer in town, or just that?
No, it's part of the system. It's every sewer in town. It's not part of the neighborhood. It's not a betterment for a neighborhood. At this point, it's an improvement to the townwide system. And and in the most recent work we performed out there was in the center. We did a upgrade to the, right here in the center, you must go back now a half dozen or so years, we did an upgrade to the flow meter,
The 8-inch that was upgraded to
Exactly,
12? That was
yeah,
in
to 12.
2011, yep.
Yeah, that was in 2011.
There was a
so it's-
200-foot section of pipe that was upgraded from 8 to 12.
Right, because that was right in that area coming off of Littleton Road a decade ago. And again, so that's why it's even more curious as to, we did that improvement because it was undersized, and yet now we're seeing this level of flow coming down. And so again, we're gonna dig into it. We don't want to, guess, because it's too important to guess, but we know there are significant properties out there in terms of multifamily as well as mobile home park and other things. We just really want to get a handle of what, as well as the systems coming in from Garrison and Hunt, to understand, how this came about.
Christine, when you said that since you've been on board, you've established a process to, or a checklist or whatever of what needs to be done before a determination is made to advise the planning board, we didn't have a process in place before that?
I wouldn't say we didn't have a process in place. Maybe it wasn't documented as much.
Okay.
I do, as I understand, the previous town engineer and the previous DPW director did review each development application. I think when I started just looking how I guess developed a checklist and a systematic approach. So it might be a little different. I can't say that
you're trying to formalize it?
Trying to formalize it so that I can do it, the town engineer can do it, Mike Vanuskas can do it. And I think it is important to look at, also it reflects the sewer moratorium. So looking at the current sewer moratorium, the certain criteria. So it's really stepping through that document to make sure that we can accommodate that additional capacity. And also looking in that particular area if there is a problem in that particular area. So it is important that as part of that checklist that the sewer department kind of signs off on it as well. So I think I can't say that it wasn't done before. It's just it wasn't a standard operating procedure that was documented. So we are now documenting it and really just in the past couple weeks developed this process.
Thank you.
Good.
That's
Any
all I
other
have.
questions?
So the overall inspection, when will that be completed?
Well, we got about 98,000 feet of pipe to look at. That's still gonna be a little ways away. We're probably gonna get the full report on that one. Anticipate by the early January, February.
That covers the whole town?
No, that's the 4 sub-areas
Okay,
of the
that's just the
98,000
4.
feet, because we had the 98,000 feet, we had 500 manhole inspections, we still have about one week of TV, 2 days of TV work, and then we got about 5 days to finish up the manhole inspection, so all the field work will be complete next week, and then it's gonna go into the whole data analysis phase.
So they have in the cloud video of all these
Yes.
camera works that they did of all these lines. And then the hope is once we complete this analysis of this initial phase, we will then circle back with the DEP and say, hey, look, based on the consent order and what we found, we don't think there's any necessity to go through now the remainder of the town because here are our most troublesome areas and they're in great shape. And then that would alleviate costs in the future because, and it kind of makes sense given the age of the town system and how it was constructed. So that's sort of the big picture of what we're trying to do.
Right, one of the initial things that DEP wanted to do is they wanted you to do one of these 90,000 feet look at every year, which is, for the age and the type of the system that you have, it's just really not cost effective to do that. And we were hoping that exactly what happened was that this first project was not going to produce any real smoking guns, so we can go back and negotiate with DEP to say, let's just keep doing what the sewer district's been doing. They have crews that look at the pipes and the manholes every year, so.
Didn't Didn't your 2010 report recommend that we do a piece of this every year, though?
It was. We put that together as a potential, yes, because that was the requirement under the DEP plan. We had to have a plan in place at that time. They just had to produce a plan to implement. So yes, we did say that we did create a plan to do that. But it's because of the age of your system or the type of system you have of all plastic pipe. We were hoping the DEP wasn't going to say, yeah, go ahead and TV everything, that we were going to be able to continue doing what the DPW workers are already doing. And because what they've already been doing is looking at the pipes and they're not finding anything. And if they do find anything, they're just fixing it. So we're going to be meeting with DEP in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks to review all the stuff that we have submitted to them to date. And this will be part of those discussions.
Okay.
The only downside of the good news of the condition of the pipes is we're not finding ways to gain capacity by flow, because obviously if there was infiltration and there were breaks in the pipes or non-connects and so forth, well, obviously we could repair those and then that would free up flow in the system. And that's sort of the downside of the good news is we're not generating any sewer treatment capacity because we're not seeing any infiltration.
We might find a little bit with the manholes, because that's in a plastic pipe system, the manholes are usually the first
Yep.
things that start to go because of all the seams and the joints in them.
They're
So
not plastic.
right. So we might find some things in there, but as Paul said, it isn't going to be. We don't expect it to be anything like that's going to say, okay, you can lift the moratorium because we can find this much capacity. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Even if you're not going at a pace to do a certain length of sewer each year to ultimately cover the whole sewer system, wouldn't you want something in place that says, based on the age of this section of the sewer, in 5 years, we think we should go do the camera infiltration assessment?
The town is doing that with another camera setup. They do that already, and they started in the oldest sections of town. They started at least 3 or 4 years ago of looking at with a whole other piece of equipment that analyzes and looks for debris builds up and backups in the pipes, and they do.
My question is, from an overall system maintenance standpoint, do we know what we're proactively doing for each part of the system at what time period? So that it's not that in 2022, we did this look and we convinced DEP that it wasn't critical to do the whole system over the next 5 years or whatever they wanted, but that at the same time, it's not forgotten. In 10 years from now, we're in a crisis because we should have taken a look at something, maybe not in 2023, but maybe in 2027.
Yeah, and we
Am I
have
making
we have
sense?
and we have a similar plan with our pump station replacements and
Okay.
enhancements in terms of looking at the age of them and then going through and having a multi-year plan, 5 and 10-year plan for pump station enhancements, as well as investigations into the system, so that, like you said, we are staying on top of it. But I think, given the really reduced age of the system, we're not finding anything. And as John noted, for the past few years, we've been going out spot checking areas and just not coming across areas of concern. And now, obviously, this is a much greater investigation of what we thought were the targeted areas. And again, it's coming back, very good. And that's what we want to talk with DEP about. Where do we go from here? And then, like you said, what should we be doing in good practices going forward?
And keep in mind too, the DEP's concern with this is their concern is the II component, whereas the town's concern is the structural integrity, the failures of the pipe. We're showing that the II is not a problem, at least in this first area. So that's why we want to go back to DEP, because their issue and what they're stressing was the II. You got to find the II. Well, we looked for it and we're not finding it, and that's going to be indicative of what plastic pipe is going to show you. In the older systems, like in the older towns near Boston, it's clay pipe, and yes, you're finding leaks potentially every 10 to 15 feet down a pipeline. So, but plastic pipe, you're not going to find that.
Shouldn't.
Any other questions?
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Have a good
coming,
evening.
John.
Thank you, Christine.
Come on up, Audrey. So next up, we have the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee update.
That's the latest presentation I sent this afternoon.
It's the one I got
Okay.
with the packet.
Yeah, I didn't receive anything
I didn't
from you
receive
today,
anything
Audrey.
else.
Oh, you didn't?
No,
I sent one at about 3 p.m.
no, I checked after that.
I didn't receive it.
Both you and... Wow. Okay, I'll have to work with this then and annotate as best as I can then. I'll probably spend some extra minutes talking about these slides then.
Let's just give your name before you start.
Yeah, my name is Badri Uplipan, Chair of the CES Committee. Select Board established late October 2021. The members of the committee are Brittany Doherty, Dave Drayton, Bern Kosicki, Sean McGuinn, Dave Sperry, Kaylee Tiggin, myself, Jordan Rashawn, Bethany Ward, and we have an ex-member, Sally Johnston. In the last year, we had Melissa Joyce and Chris Haley, who's the new sustainability manager, join us. And if you skip 2 slides probably out past the outline of the update. Yeah, it's not complete, as I understand. We'll make corrections for these, but this shows the sort of history of the sustainability-related activities, first order, excluding recycling and some of the other committees that are there. But in terms of clean energy itself, this sort of encapsulates several of the activities that we have tried to do in this town over the past about 14, 15 years. And I think Pat and Paul are well aware of all those details, but in summary, essentially, we started with the Greener Chelmsford initiative, recognizing local businesses. We moved on to get to Green Communities Act funding, establishing the first of the hybrid vehicles that the town purchased, going to solarized mass challenges to have solar panels as a group with Carla, I believe at that time. We put in the energy manager position, doing the performance contracts, buying solar power for the entire town or as much as possible now, Chelmsford Choice, the aggregation program, and things around that, and then finally the establishment of the Clean Energy Sustainability Committee. I probably am going to read more from my slide deck, but you can go to the next slide and it'll give most of the details. I wish that slide was available. But essentially, urgency by numbers, the IPCC is now, with its latest reports indicating the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change is reporting more dire warnings about us not being able to meet potentially not meeting the goals. In fact, there was also another report out by UMass Boston that came out June 1st, I believe, and I'll send a slide this later on if it needs to go into records, that points out for Boston area and Metro Boston area, one of the fun facts or a grim fact is by the end of the century, the Boston area in general will experience a larger number of greater than 90-degree Fahrenheit days. Currently, I think summers are about 10 days a year. They're expecting by the end of the summer, this century, those days to be about anywhere between 20 days at the low end to 60 to 80 days in the high end, which is doubling to 2 months of just in the Boston area as an impact itself. Obviously, climate change, climate crisis, whatever terminologies we end up using, is not local. It has global implications. And even in the Boston area, there's increasing flood risk and essentially low potential groundwater during summer, obviously, in the summer months, just because of how temperature patterns change. There's also global impact to grain production. increasing drought, land usage patterns change, health hazards due to heat index, obviously changing biodiversity, and potential for new pandemics induced by changing biodiversity in the heat index as such. So that's the climate urgency. For the town itself and a lot of the for residents and for any of our investment portfolios and how we model things, there's a lot of movement in the investment community based on ESG, environmental, social, and governance-based bond ratings or investment ratings and stuff like that. People are investing. There's some startup activity around now rating of municipal bonds by ESG ratings, so also to try and figure out who's doing what and to mitigate climate and such. So these might have long-term impacts on bond ratings and investment risk profiles as we look to, put out our bonds as such. There could be changes in funding sources. We'll talk about that a little bit. If today we have gas tax coming in to fund road development and other things, those changes may happen over time as fossil fuels likely get phased out. What happens there? We have a long-term adaptation requirement. Interestingly, and key thing is there is a whole host of commentators now talking about the fact that we may have we now need to start thinking about climate adaptation at the same time and preparing ourselves for all the things that we may not be able to achieve. But at the same time, scientists and engineering folks keep hope alive that there is a potential to come up with new technologies, such as direct air capture, which is sort of your trash incinerator in reverse, basically. You suck in a lot of air and then capture the carbon and sequester that. But it's a dicey game still. We don't know that it will be successful or not in there. So I wanted to highlight with this, and the committee would obviously want to highlight that since about a year since we passed this the charter at town meeting last June, it almost feels like we haven't done much in that area. I have a chart with me which I'm not going to be able to show, obviously, but I will briefly summarize it. Right now, the data that I have, or a graph that we picked up from a website, Climate Risk Tracker, Climate Action Tracker website, indicates that current actions and policies will get us to about 2.5, 2.9 degrees Celsius. Is that in metric system, about 6 degrees Fahrenheit. And if we were to do the 2030 targets or policies and targets and really get good at it to meet what we want to meet in 2030, which is about 7.5 years, however you look at it, we'll get about 2.4 degrees. And if we really, really, really want to get at doing to the 1.5 degrees C, starting about 2030, 45, we really need to start thinking about going to negative territory, which means we need to start capturing carbon, sequestering carbon. With that said, I'll go to the next slide. I think that contains the slide on, this is quick data. This data was provided by NEMCOG analysis based on the RPA funding that we received for the multiple towns. This is a partial scope analysis of Chelmsford's greenhouse gas. Essentially, it puts all of Chelmsford at about 356,000 metric tons of carbon CO2 equivalent. That translates about 10.17 metric tons per person in Chelmsford. In Massachusetts, the per capita average is about 9.5 metric tons. This is a partial number because it only comes from building sources, transportation, wastewater, public transportation, methane leaks in the natural gas system that we have, solid waste, wastewater, those kinds of things. It doesn't include, and your cars on a statistical basis, right, as what we use.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What is scope 1, 2, and 3?
So scope 1, 2, and 3 are terminologies in which scope 1 is essentially by activities done by yourself, so to speak. Scope 2 is things that you immediately on-site consume or do something. Scope 3 is your supply chain, what is coming out from
Okay.
the purchasing, what you do, and your value chain out to your customer aspects. That's generally the terminology used in this world of computation, so to speak. So if you're a factory, you would say, I'm consuming some materials, the carbon footprint of that materials. If I'm using electricity, I use that, and wastewater and all of that. And if I'm purchasing stuff and trucks are delivering goods to me, all of that is quantified. And Scope 3 is the biggest portion of the numbers, basically. So to give you perspective, again, this was sent out, but I will share this with the committee after this. I'll check this right off the bat. 1 ton CO2 is sequesterable anywhere between 20 and 40 trees, mature trees. And that's anywhere between half an acre to 1 acre of land if you're doing tree-based sequestration. So think about it as Chelmsford needs about 350,000 acres or 10 Chelmsfords to sequester the carbon that we produce annually. So 1 Chelmsford requires about 10 Chelmsfords to sequester if we were to just plant mature trees. That's sort of the equivalent breakdown, just to give you scale concept as such. Better estimates of United States average is about 17 to 18 metric tons per person. So that just increases to more number of people. So because you consider air travel, food, clothing, furniture, none of that has been included in this. And so the numbers are much higher specifically. Anyways, I've given you a picture that about 1 Chelmsford puts out carbon that, if you had to sequester to the grand challenge that we have, we would have to have 10 to 20 Chelmsfords every year, which is not very easy to get there. This is the breakdown of greenhouse gases emissions by sector and type. All said and done, different things we'll walk through here. Essentially, transportation and building sector are the biggest one, the orange and the blue in the first chart. It then further breaks down to on-road vehicles, as well as residential and commercial buildings, essentially, and then you're looking at the 2 main categories, just building and transportation is your biggest things, residential or commercial. So that's where those numbers essentially land up. If you go to the next couple of slides here, MAPC is the Metropolitan Area Policy Commission, I think, Planning Commission or Committee, Planning Commission. They have put out a good playbook, 4 or 5 playbooks, and I've picked up 4 of them for highlight, which the committee is looking at and trying to analyze what's best, how to apply those kinds of things. The first one is just clean energy supply as the first playbook item, which essentially says increase the number of renewable energy generation use and access, build an efficient infrastructure, and reduce the impact of the carbon grid. Chelmsford significantly, or in Massachusetts, significantly the electricity, I think over 60% of electric supply comes from natural gas-fired plants. Less than 3-5% of it comes from renewable solar. There's nuclear and hydro and overall stuff. The state renewable portfolio standard, I believe this year for renewable energy is roughly about 20%, give or take, 18% to 20%, and increases 2% every year through 40%, I think, in 2040. Whereas we need to be at 50% renewable energy by the end of 2030 and more than 80% renewable energy by 2050. So you can see the gap that we have in that aspect itself. So the 4 playbooks fundamentally are electrification and energy efficiency. Right, that's the theme behind the 4 things. But clean energy supply, as you talked about, and the next one is climate smart zoning and permitting strategies. Again, trying to incentivize new construction and others to become more energy efficient and try to reduce future footprints. And the second page that you're currently displaying has the net zero buildings, trying to, again, on a building level, what can you do? And then mobility strategies, essentially saying, how do we improve electrification of vehicles? And there's a big trend around what's known as keyword being active mobility, which means can you figure out walking, bicycling, and non-fossil fuel or even non-electric modes, or use self-powered transportation, so to speak. That is the key thing. Those are the big 4 playbooks items. I think Chelmsford's been doing some amount of several of these things over time, be it the stretch code adoption by being the Green Communities Act, or Chelmsford aggregation, trying to go get some things done, Chelmsford choice, basically. We've been doing things around that. And committee members have been talking with multiple other committees, whether it be Planning Board, Finance, reaching out to Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Club, or not club, committee, and trying to figure out ways on how we bring a integrated viewpoint of everybody understanding what they can do from their committee or perspective. Even Conservation Commission, we talked to them about how to make things easier if somebody wants to put geothermal when they're abutting wetland areas, or how do you think about it, how to make the permitting process just a tad bit more easier. That's all. I'm not saying that you remove everything, but can that make that? That's a small little thing, right? So these are four playbooks that we are looking and understanding the details of much more, and we'll have more recommendations. Other towns have recommendations that are talking about increasing the renewable energy component. I think several towns have. Some towns, I think, have higher than the state mandated number as their default number, 10 or 15%, and then they have a lot more sign-ups on the 100% as we do. In fact, I think Chelmsford Choice's current highest rating, the 100% renewable option, I think is like 13.5 cents per kilowatt hours or something, and National Grid's basic rate this winter was about 14.5 cents per kilowatt on generation itself. So it was actually cheaper to have been on Chelmsford Choice, green electricity, 100%, than on natural gas, which is only going to continue to increase in overall sense. So we're looking at all of these. We'll come up with recommendations and stuff. But I'd like to also, maybe before I go in the activities and timeline, one of the things that we are continuing to think about is we want to conduct community surveys, a few visioning and public input sessions to improve the awareness of these challenges, as well as to seek ideas that may be any different, if at all, than the mainline activities. We've also had some preliminary conversation with banks, and we're trying to reach out to the real estate agents and see how they might be able to participate and educate and be involved in improving the standard in which homes are at and when they're sold and stuff. The city of Portland, Oregon, for example, has, I think, mandated that all homes coming up for sale, or they have to have a home energy rating system, HERS score, on them before they can be sold, right? So there are different models across the country that people are doing. Not saying that we have to do that immediately, but we have to have those kinds of discussions about how homes can be upgraded before or immediately after the sale process or during lifetime as such. So we would have to think about those kinds of things. And how do you fund them? That's a bigger challenge. The other thing is equity considerations, right? People are on fixed income, inflation's rising. How do you manage all of that? So these are complex topics that require engagement, discussion across community, government, businesses to make this happen. So I think the key things on the activities and timeline, we'll come up with a fuller report of this like many other towns have. We are happily borrowing text and ideas or formats from other towns, but we are inserting our data that's requisite for Chelmsford, because we don't want to replicate things that others have done. We also would like to schedule, summer's not a great time maybe, but early fall public input sessions, and I'll seek in a few minutes ideas from the board here. But we really also have to think about, there's a management saying in for at least commercial corporations and stuff that culture eats strategy for breakfast, which basically means if you understand purpose, motivation, and stuff, you can have strategies, but if people are really believing in that what needs to get done, it gets done properly, and it's the fundamental thing. So in a sense, I think the biggest thing, and the translation that means is the community needs to become aware. We've got to really plan for it and have as many avenues and engagement touch points at which every board, committee, business is really bought into it, and we have to get into that awareness that this is a serious challenge that we cannot ignore. I mean, we may seem happy and nice because we get enough water, or the snow's now melting faster and we get water and we are okay with it, but 30 years down the line, we just don't know if droughts will be more common in the summers of Chelmsford or not. And even if we are blessed not to be, we may have to transport water to some other places that don't have that water through water sharing agreements, because if we are just happen to be plain lucky. So we'll have to really think about such detailed aspects. I think one other aspect, Select Board did a fantastic job in coming up with the vision and values system. And one of the three things that I think that I want to bring up, it has sustainability, it has inclusiveness and diversity, and stewardship. I think stewardship and inclusivity, I think the key words I would attach with it is, it's not just looking for us in the immediate 5, 10, 20, 15 years type of thing. It's inclusivity of intergenerational inclusivity. Representatives from the future are not here, but they will occupy this land and our town and our things, so we need to represent their interests and not burden them with things that they cannot handle easily on. With that said, I think we really need to brainstorm, and if Select Board has ideas, I would very much welcome this. How do we get the word out that this is a very fundamental challenge that impacts our future finances, our future health, our future character of the town, future operations? So just a minutes ago we were talking about sewer pipelines and stuff, but we will expand the capacity. What if there is not enough water and water rationing happens? You may not have wanted to invest in it, or the vice versa, right? We may have to pump a lot more. So we've got to think about several of these conditions. So if there are suggestions in how we might want to do it, other towns have held listening sessions. So certainly I would absolutely love if Select Board and CES and other committees come together to have some public input sessions. But if there are other ideas, we would really like input from you. Couple of quick actions that could be taken. Again, I'm not saying that this should be, and we should go through some debate and discussion at an appropriate time, is improving and getting ready for Chelmsford Choice being a vehicle, a quick vehicle, to try and see if we can increase the renewable content on there. Two other ideas that come as restarting or redoing a version of Chelmsford Saves, which was the energy audit program, redoing that and enabling that. Re-kicking off a version of the Solarize Chelmsford, Solarize Mass version again to do more solar installations. I have a slide here that I will again share, but Google Sunroof as a project has estimated, there's enough flat commercial roof space within Chelmsford that can potentially produce enough electricity to meet the residential demands of Chelmsford as of today. kind of a thing. It's an interesting observation. The numbers may not be accurate to the nth degree, but it significantly shows that you can be within the space that we want to do it. We continue to have discussions. I'm trying to meet with school committee and have discussions on how kids are educated on adapting. They can be a good force. We'll try and reach out to the senior community and stuff. With that, I will open up the floor for you, for the select board to ask questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, guidance.
Thank you, Badri. And we have certainly done joint listening sessions with committees before. That's, certainly something I think we could help you with when you're ready to do that. Any questions or comments from the board? Any other ideas you want to give them?
From my perspective, I just look at this, and it's very difficult. It's new, you're in your infancy and so forth, but it's coming up with some metrics too that I think would really make sense for us to be able to measure ourselves. Because right now, the NIMCOG metric, I see the breakdown. I don't really totally know where should we be focused, how should we be looking at sub-tier metrics that would help drive us at least back to the mass average. Then the other thing too is the statistics. Is the mass average skewed towards more rural, skewed towards more city? Because sometimes they have a bias, these metrics, and I don't know where that all sits. And I think a lot of those things are important to understand from my perspective.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
Yeah, especially the issue of the vehicle emissions. You've got two highways running through town, 495 and Route 3.
Right.
It would, it obviously makes sense that we'd have significant vehicle emissions, but yet that's out of our control. We can't regulate the traffic flow on those two highways, so I would expect that Chelmsford's numbers would be higher than
Right, we certainly have our share of
than
trucks,
Carlisle
too.
that, doesn't have any highways going through the town, right?
Budget, do you have some sort of a dream that you, or if we were to say, what's your best recommendation for the town, or?
Oh, I have lots of dreams personally, but I don't think that would be appropriate, and I would start a lot of debate around it. But
If I asked you for one recommendation?
Stop natural gas tomorrow. Not happening. I think there are 3 or 4 quick reactions and I think I listed them, and as I said, those are things that we need to have more discussions around. One is upping our green electricity component, energy audits and tightening up things. There is a big push around conversion of our heating and cooling to heat pumps. That's a huge push, and we should be pressing that at breakneck speed if we can. I think those are 3 things. Personally, for me, I would love, but it would get very debatable. Food is another way to control for and do things, because the big levers that we have as people is methane and NOx, nitrous oxide. I talk like a ESG person now, but methane is natural gas and as such, or animal agriculture outputs. NOx comes from farming, for excessive fertilizer use as such. Those would be the big ticket items. The reason is simply we've got to slow down the heating perspective, and methane is good as a first order break, but it's also difficult because it's coming mainly from natural gas systems and farming production. The 4 big things I would summarize: upping and thinking about at the next contract level through some form of upgraded levels through the next 6 to 7 years. Chelmsford choice should look at bumping up the baseline renewables, number 1. Massive push on energy audits, heat pump installation, and on the other side, trying to figure out how to do solarize try to gain as much distributed solar rights capacity as we can within the town and stuff to do that. Those would be 4 pushes that would be relatively, well, I don't know, I see it relatively easy because many towns are going that way. So in that sense, there is precedence, and so we can leverage those notions to have discussion in the community.
Thank you, Badri.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul.
Oh, our next item is our town accountant, Darlene Lucy, is here to give a financial report on the current fiscal year as we're now started the final month of the year, but she's got data through April. And again, the news continues to be good, but I'll turn it over to Darlene.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm going to give you an update on the revenues. I'm going to give you an update on today's, actually through April. We haven't closed out May as yet, so I'm just going to give you the revenues for the expenditures, though I am going to give you the May expenditures, but these are April's revenues. So, but for the revenues through April, for our the local receipts, one of our largest one, of course, is our motor vehicle, and we're doing really well again there. We're 10% higher than we a collection rate from the prior year. We will be receiving a small commitment in June, but that won't actually be paid until July. But we've already made our number. We had a $5 million budget number, and we're at 5.1 million collected to date. So again, we're doing well in that area, even though I myself am looking for a vehicle and can't seem to find one, so I don't know where people are I guess, still buying vehicles. But our revenues through, we're at 92% of our $149 million budget, so we're above our targeted benchmark of the 83%, so that's overall good for revenues. A local meals tax, again, we're up 20% from prior year. I think that was, most of it was due from COVID. People weren't out last year eating, where they're back this time eating. Hotel tax quarter was up from prior year. We do have some homeless people in our hotels that actually run that number a little bit. But the permitting revenues, we're a little bit under our budgeted number, but I do think that by June 30th we will hit the $1.5 million budget that we have for them. So again, we're down from last year, but again, we had that $1 million permitting from Thermo Fisher. So that number's a little bit skewed, but we're, again, strong numbers with the permitting. We should be fine. We'll hit that number on June 30th. Rental income is up. We weren't renting out in any of the public buildings last year, but this year we are. So again, we're doing well there. The number that we're not doing well in is the investment income. We've seen a decline. We're actually in a negative $52,000 deficit. We do a mark-to-market that we could see. We might break even on that number, but we won't make the budgeted number of. We have a $75,000 budgeted number. We won't make that number. I don't see that we will. Talking to John Souza, our finance director, he's just not seeing the investments numbers turning around. So, but bottom line though, with the other pieces of the local receipts, making those numbers or being higher, we're going to still do okay. Bottom line, we'll still be fine. Numbers will be in the black, and we'll do well. Real estate collections, we're always right about the 98% there. State reimbursements are fine. We're a little bit higher even on other financing sources. We are receivables, the SREX for the receivables, the solar is doing fine. We actually just had a sale of our solar, so that's not even in this number. We sell off some of our solar credits, and that money will be coming in. That actually came in May. So we're going to be fine for our for revenues. I don't see any other issues except for that, just the investment income. For the expenditures, we're at the 80% expended, so we're just again right at our targeted number. Departments look fine. What I'm doing now is every week departments will be receiving year-to-date budget reports, and I'll be in close contact with the department heads on where they are with their budgets to make sure that they stay within their line items, that they don't have anything that's going to be coming up in the next couple weeks that's going to have them go over budget. So far, we've been fine. We don't have any issues. We did all the adjustments that we needed to do at the Springtown meeting for the 22 budget adjustments, and that's reflected in the report that I gave you, that are all those budget adjustments. So we don't have really any concerns with any of those numbers. What I did do is don't normally do is I gave you the reports for the enterprise funds, and I think it's just good just to kind of see where we are with the enterprise funds. This is the time of year I kind of look at them, see where they're going to end up. This first one is the sewer revenues, the sewer enterprise fund. The top half of this is their revenues, and then it goes into their expenditures. Because this is an enterprise fund, you take this in total. So at this point, their revenues are exceeding their expenditures, which is great, by about $425,000. Speaking with DPW, Joyce Cote, the business manager there, she's going to have some more sewer revenues coming in, small amounts. We'll have some coming in from Tingsboro for sewer users. So they'll definitely end in the black, and have some money going into their undesignated fund balance. Their current undesignated fund balance at this right now is $576,662. We'll probably be adding again, I think, probably I think around $300,000 will be adding to that number. So seeing no issues with the sewer enterprise fund. The next one we have is the golf course. The only thing we have there, we didn't do any expense work over at the club. We did some a couple years ago, and I think we actually did some last year. This year, we've just had the revenue coming in, so there's $56,000 worth of revenue. So there again, the current undesignated fund balance there is $186,000. We'll be adding whatever that revenue, the total revenue that we do receive. I'll still be receiving another month's worth of revenue with them. So we'll be adding, over $60,000+ to their undesignated fund balance. The next one is the PEG Access, the cable TV. Their number looks a little bit like their revenues are less than their expenditures, so I just want a little explanation of that. We actually encumbered $26,000 from the prior year for some servers that they were going to do, that they needed to buy, but they couldn't do it at the end of fiscal year, so we encumbered that. What happens in the enterprise fund is they go ahead and just charge it to the enterprise. On the balance sheet, the $26,000 is sitting as an encumbrance. When I close out their expenditures, I will bring that $26,000 back into their number. So they're going to look good there. They also have at the fall town meeting, they $65,000 from their free cash or fund balance. It was allocated to buy 2 robotic cameras for the McCarthy Auditorium. So they went off and they spent that. Again, when I close that out, I'll take the $65,000 from their undesignated fund balance that they have available. So these numbers, they will have a free cash number or an undesignated fund balance. They'll actually end again in the black, even though that right now it looks like they're running in the red. they're really not. They have money that's sitting in their balance sheet that's going to be used to this account. Their current undesignated fund balance is $315,000, and that's with the $65,000 already pulled out of there. So they'll be fine by the end of the fiscal year. And the last, no, it's not the last one, but the stormwater enterprise, they're doing very well. We actually have at this point, there's $1 million of, between their revenue and their expenditures. Their revenues of 2.6 and their expenditures of 1.6. Again, there are some projects there that I did talk to Joyce that they're going to be, there's just some salaries in there that'll be used, and there's some projects that'll be finishing up. But they're still going to end with a fairly good undesignated balance. Their current balance is $211,000, but we will be adding, again, to that number. And the last enterprise fund we have is the forum. Again, we're doing work at the forum. Everybody knows we had a refrigeration problem, but that's going to be a borrowing. That's not coming from the enterprise fund. That's actually that's outside of the borrowing. So we did a $1.5 million borrowing for a new refrigeration system. So really, there's been no other capital work done out of here. The only thing we'll do is we do have a debt payment that will be coming in June, but they'll still have a little bit of money that will go to their undesignated fund balance. The current balance in their free cash, what they have is $268,000. So they'll add a little bit more to that. It's not really, again, their revenue right now is $65,000, which is $10,000 over the budgeted amount of 55. So, I mean, they're fine, but we know we have expenditures that are not going to be flowing through the enterprise fund. There's not enough revenue to be able to pay that debt off. So that's why we have to keep any of those projects outside of the enterprise fund that's going on for any work that has to be done over there. That's really just the update of where we are. Again, all the departments will be receiving monthly reports now through. We will be running, I can run fiscal 22 warrants into July. I'll have 2 warrants for any invoices, any obligations that people have had for their fiscal 22 funds. And then anything beyond that, if they still had obligated but didn't receive invoices, they're going to have encumbered their funds for that. And they'll get me purchase orders to do any of those encumbering. Other than that, I think we're going to be fine this year. Probably looking, I hate to say this because you give out a number, but maybe our free cash number, I'm looking 1.8 to 2 million. We're not going to have another $4 million number, but I think we'll still be within a nice, like 1.8 to 2 million is what I did a kind of a rough estimate, and that's about what I'm looking at.
Thank you, Darlene.
Okay.
That's what we were wondering.
I know. Don't hold me to that, because anything can happen.
You said it.
But Darlene, as you depart, the other thing that we should give the board a heads up on is we are out to borrow from the town meeting and the other actions, and so Darlene, John, and I were on a conference call with Standard & Poor's and our financial advisor last week. We expect next Monday, meaning the 13th, to receive our bond rating from Standard & Poor's, and then the bond sale will occur about a few days after that, and then we'll be back here in 3 weeks on the 27th to seek your approval for the bond sale that will go out. And so once again, we will give you the information as it comes in terms of the bond rating as well as the bond sale, the interest rates, and so forth. So again, we will see Darlene and John at our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it was a positive meeting too. I mean, we don't know what their committee will but they were very happy to see the finances of the town. So
Have you
it
looked
was a
at
good-
what the bond yields are right now for the period we're going to need it?
Yeah, well, I mean, most of our borrowing is 10-year period, and so obviously they're up. But remember, we borrow tax exempt, so we're probably looking in the 2s as opposed to before we were in the 1s.
1.6, I
Yeah,
think, was the last one.
exactly, yeah. But again, it's still, historically, it's still very good. But
Yeah.
well, again, we'll get you that information in real time and then come back for formal action at your next meeting in 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Joanne.
Darrell. Oops.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, and we now move on to our discussion items. The first one is the flag policy revision. You recall when Town Council Paul Haverty was here at the last meeting, he was requested to draft additional language to amend the board's policy 9.2, display of flags on town property. And so in your folder you have, and obviously displayed on the screen for those watching, the last paragraph is the new language, which is the notwithstanding language moving forward in terms of addressing the concerns about banners, as well as the parade decorative banners that are displayed on the, in the, community throughout the course of the year. And we've asked council also about the issue of the military community covenant banners that are also displayed in the center.
Is there any other holiday other than July 4th where we do these banners? Should we
Well-
just call it out instead of a generic holiday? Because there are all kinds of federal holidays and,
Well, I mean, the 4th of July Parade Committee, we display banners currently on a schedule of twice a year. We have the summer banners and the winter banners, which obviously the winter banners aren't near the 4th, but their proceeds go to support the 4th.
I understand that, but my question is holiday too generic, too general? There's a very specific use that we allow right now for those poles. So if somebody came forth and said, okay, well, now we want to do, I don't know, Christmas and Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and,
Yeah.
is there a gate there because it says only where such banners are consistent with the form prescribed by the town?
Maybe just the word holiday needs to be removed because
Yeah.
it is kind of confusing, I would agree. Just,
Yeah, you could delete the word holiday. You just say, may allow decorations that include banners indicating support of businesses only where such banners are
I mean,
consistent with the
yeah, we
form
could just
prescribed.
sanity check that with Paul Haverty. If there's a reason he thinks that word needs to be in there.
Because again, the goal of this paragraph was the banners that are on the light posts plus the 2 granite posts in the common.
Right, well, that's my other question is, do we need another one about the granite posts? Or does what he's written there cover that?
I didn't think it did, but
You do think it does?
I
or
didn't.
You don't think it does?
yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it does either.
I think he was
Yeah.
kind of targeting the banners we sell to raise money
Right,
for
we
Floyd.
never finished, we kind of brought up the granite posts, but I think we never really finished the discussion.
Well, I think,
so-
I mean, most of the time, the granite posts are used, in my opinion, are public service announcements. Welcome home a veteran, get out and vote, market, they're
Market on the common.
right, they're public service announcements. They're not for any other means other than to get a message out to the community.
Any other comments?
No, I think, I think there needs to be a little bit more specificity in there about like what the posts are and the locations or whatever. Might be helpful.
Because we have them in the common.
Including the poles where the banners are, or just, are you talking about the granite posts that's
I
not
was
in there
thinking of
yet?
the posts.
Okay,
The rest,
You're talking about the granite posts.
yes.
Let's just use that word to be clear.
Yeah.
Because posts could also mean light posts, but
No, the granite posts.
we have those on the
Because
town
nobody-
common and we have those in
Who
north.
else is gonna know
Is-
what that is?
right, they're in are they anywhere else besides the common and the vinyl square?
Yeah.
No, the only other things that are just, no, the only other things that are displayed are the Vote Tuesday banners, but
Right,
those are,
That's on the post.
yeah, that's on the
Well,
grant.
I mean, you do
Other
have
places, too.
electric signs like at McCarthy and the senior
McCarthy and
center that say
Senior Center.
vote,
Yeah,
Temporary.
right, but that's all I can think
but
of.
they're all public service
Those are-
announcements.
Those aren't flags.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Right.
Well, would you make the argument that what's on those granite posts are flags?
The banners,
signs.
yeah.
No,
I
we
mean, they're-
already talked about that last time.
All right.
Because it was essentially cloth between two things. It fell under the definition.
Make them out of wood. All right.
Okay.
So, do we want to adopt what's here with a modification tonight, or do we want Paul Haverty to come back at June 27th, also with the granite posts, insanity checking the holiday, deleting the holiday piece?
Is he due to be here on the 27th?
Well, not yet, but we can
yet.
ask him to
Okay,
come.
well, I'm just asking.
We can put it early on and ask him to come unless
But I
there's an
think this
executive
paragraph,
section.
this paragraph, I think minus the word holiday, does a great job at explaining the light posts. I think we do need him to be clear on the granite posts.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So do you want to wait till it's all together?
I'm not in any rush.
Except that the banners are up. But
Oh, you want to vote on that tonight? I mean, I'm okay with voting on that tonight, minus the word holiday.
that's why he focused on this, was
Okay.
because the last meeting
Oh,
we had,
okay.
Paul said the banners are going up today or yesterday.
I'm fine with it as long as the word holiday is not in there.
Do you want to vote on that one and then bring Paul Haverty back on the granite posts?
Or do you, normally the board has a two-meeting cycle for amending a policy, right?
Correct.
So if we count this one as the first one, and then we come
Yeah.
back with the modified language the next time for the banners, then we have the two thing, and then we get it all done at once.
Oh, that's right, I forgot about the two meeting.
So that,
How did you not remind us of that?
Okay, so we'll be doing it on the 27th.
okay, all right. And I'll get the additional language in the meantime.
So the next one was the annual audit charter change language, and we already approved the language, but at the last meeting, there was some discussion about responsibility and whether that needed to be explicitly stated somewhere.
This seems fine to me when I looked at it.
I'm okay with it too. It's not in the packet, but I'll put it up on the screen. In the town charter, in section 4.3, it does say that the town manager shall be responsible to the select board for the proper operation of town affairs, for which he's given responsibility under this charter. Because there were two things, the select board responsibility and the town manager. And then in the select board policies, which I have on the screen now, there is a statement on the primary duties of the town manager, and under item J, it says, perform all other duties consistent with the mission statement in the Chelmsford Charter. So, in my opinion, the town manager accountability with the select
Has it,
board,
yeah.
I mean, the select board accountability is really clear in that one. Because it says the select board shall provide, but I thought it was covered,
Yep, I do too.
unless anybody else thinks there's more language that needs to be written.
Nope, I
No,
was
think
concerned
you
about it.
belt and suspendered it.
Yep.
Okay. So, we'll,
Do we need a
Move
motion, or that
forward.
just goes to town meeting?
no, we already voted on the language, so.
You'll see it on a draft warrant.
We'd only need a motion if we wanted to add more language.
Groovy.
Okay. So, Paul, you're on bid awards?
Yeah, I mean, recognizing the lateness of the hour and we've got
still have
executive session,
executive
so I'll try to move it along. What I'm seeking your approval this evening is on a bid award for Chelmsford High School Stadium lighting installation. You see that the bids were opened on June 1st. There were 4 bidders. The lowest qualified bid is from Utility Service and Assistance of $135,380. As I mentioned in email, it is qualified. This is a company that's done work in Chelmsford before. They were the sole bidder of the four that actually came to the pre-bid conference, and so they were the most interested, and therefore they are familiar with the project. I think the others sort of threw in a flyer, quite frankly. And where this is going, this project is funded by the school department, so after your approval this evening, if it's granted, it will then go to the school committee by Dr. Lang tomorrow night for their approval for a budget transfer, and then the project would advance. Their goal is to have this work completed by August 12th, and so basically that the lighting, everything is in time for the fall season.
Okay.
You know, so again, everything appears to be in order with this bid submittal in terms of bid bond, references, everything else. So I'd seek
Any
your formal
questions?
approval.
So they've done work with us before.
Yes, yeah,
They're just shockingly low.
yeah. But I think what it is I think what you're
Just
seeing.
making sure they
yeah,
don't start
But I think what
to-
you're seeing is in this environment, you're just having people throwing in flyers, you know, who, like, you know.
Yeah, they don't
get
want to
it.
do it.
Throwing in lottery tickets, yeah, basically what they're
If they
doing.
get it, they get a home and win it.
Exactly, yeah.
So you want a motion?
Yes, please.
Unless there's any other discussion, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the IFB Chelmsford High School Football Stadium Lighting Installation bid to Utility Service and Assistance Corporation in the amount of $135,380.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Brief report this evening on the House and Senate budget earmarks, as I informed you by email, but since our last meeting, the Senate budget, Senator Barrett's amendment for $100,000 for the Chelmsford Center for the Arts was incorporated into the Senate version of the budget. There's now a conference committee formed, and we'll await to see what comes out of conference committee from the earmark that was put on the House side for the, and now the earmark on the Senate side. Hopefully both will survive, and again, I'll keep you updated. My guess is it's probably going to be sometime next month, given what historically has been the budget pattern of the legislature. And then the other thing is on the flex grant, is wanted to inform the board formally, we did receive a flex grant in the amount of $16,237.34, and that will be used for roof inspections at the Center Elementary School and the roof of the barn at the Warren Pole property. So that's good news. Yeah, Maya's concerned by that roof because it's a vacant building. So anyway, it's a minor thing.
You're keeping that barn, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about the one that's got the open bayance?
Exactly. Yep. Okay, so that's what I have in my report. And then you have like 2 openings on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which you received 3 applications that are in your packet. One's an unexpired term, and one would be the full term that's coming up as of July 1. So you've got Milo Ransdell of Cortlandt Drive. You've got, an application from Linda Morell of Scotty Hollow Drive and William Campbell of Coach Road.
So I guess the question is, do we want to vote tonight, or do we want to invite them to come say something, since we have more applicants than slots?
I think we should invite them to come and speak to us. I mean, we've done that before when we've had more applicants than spots, so.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
We'll invite them on the 27th. Were you going to say something, Ken?
Nope.
Okay, we'll invite them to the 6/27 meeting. And then the next item, and more typical at this time of the year, is the list of annual appointments. You can see the top portion of the list before the crossbar in the center is select board appointments, the responses we got for the renewal letters that Christina Bruce sent out, and then below is the response on those town manager appointments. Again, these are all reappointments.
I had never noticed the fence viewer before. What is that?
That's another one of the historic positions in the community in terms of, it historically was there to dispute boundary issues.
Okay.
Used to be elected.
Used to be
Between the
elected,
town.
used to be elected in
I
town
never
years back.
noticed that one
Between
before.
Billerica, Chelmsford,
Yeah,
and...
Christine
No,
Clancy.
that's perambulation of the bounds. These are boundaries between property owners, which today is done with survey instruments and so forth, so it's.
Okay, any other questions?
They get an application for
We'll
that
take a
job.
motion.
Yeah, hi.
It's appointed by the town manager. Mark. You got a smoosh. So I'll make a motion, can we just do it as one swipe?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to reappoint all of the annual presented appointments.
To approve the fiscal year 23 annual
All right,
appointments
to
as
approve
presented.
to approve the fiscal 23
As presented.
year appointments as presented.
Second.
Thanks, boss.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
5-0.
And like I said, we've got a few outstanding. The most notable would be town council appointments at your next meeting as well.
Yeah, we'll do town council at the next meeting.
And
Okay,
that's all I have under appointments and
So next we have minutes. May 9th, are there any suggested amendments before we take the motion? Not, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the select board minutes from the May 9th, 2022 meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. The listening session minutes of 5:16. Any amendments before we take the motion? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the May 16th, 2022 listening session meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. And the regular session minutes from May 23rd. Any amendments before we take the motion?
How do we pull that off? No amendments. So I'll make a motion to approve the select board regular meeting minutes from the May 23rd, 2022 select board meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Next, we have liaison reports. Mark?
I'm all set, thanks.
George?
I'd just like to, it's so long ago, but I'd like to remind people that 78 years ago today, probably the biggest battle in the history of the United States started, the invasion of Normandy. And there aren't many people left that were there, but God bless them, and, you know, it was probably as big a battle as there ever was, as important as any of them. And we just had Memorial Day and everything. You know, I'd just like to, again, thank everybody for participating in the service and all that, and what they did for us. And so many of them, I mean, and that was the greatest generation as far as I was concerned. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to be brought up by a lot of those guys and people. And
Thank you,
just
George.
never forget them, that's all.
Ken?
I'm good.
Pat?
Yeah, I have a few. First of all, I want to congratulate all the seniors who graduated from Chelmsford High School and Neshoba. Graduation was held last Saturday. So congratulations to them, and good luck on your next stage of your life. There was one ribbon cutting since our last meeting, and that was at Merrimack Realty Group, which is on Alpine Lane. As the name implies, they handle real estate issues. This upcoming weekend is the Chelmsford Friends of the Library book sale, Friday and Saturday. So if you need books to read for the summer, the sale will be held at the town offices. Come and fill up your bookcases. And lastly, Flag Day is next Tuesday, June 14th. The Garrison House will be having a ceremony at 4 p.m., open to the public. And the Elks are also having a ceremony. I believe it's at 7. I'm not sure exactly on the time on that. Sorry.
Okay. I just have one. The Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee is having a neighborhood session on June 8th at 6:30, and they're meeting at the bathhouse at the playground. I will take a motion. It is 8:44
No
p.m.
press.
We don't put it on anymore.
It's not even on the agenda anymore.
I know. I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss a joint meeting with the Fire Station Study Committee to consider the purchase of real property, strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and review executive session minutes from May 9th, 2022, segments 1 through 6.
Second.
And not to return. Sorry.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mark?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I vote aye.